Farage and his comments, which has drew some criticism, shall we say, from the Labour Party and the Conservatives, is that the West provoked Putin. What do you make of it, Alex?
Yeah, so I saw this interview. I think with Nigel Farage, when he makes a point, and it's interesting that he wants to become leader of the opposition. I think, firstly, the polls have probably gone to his head. I think everyone needs to understand how.
In what way?
Well, in the way that in the next election, he's not going to become leader of the opposition. He thinks, okay, let's say the Tories get 50 seats, for example. Very unlikely, in my mind, are the Tories going to decide, you know what, the MP from Clacton, Nigel Farage, let's make him the leader.
I don't think he wants to be leader of the Tories. He says the Conservatives are dead. He argues there are no Conservatives left in the Conservative Party. And you say he's not going to be the opposition, but there's 4 or 5 polls now with Reform polling above the Conservatives.
Yeah.
But, under this electoral system, OK, Reform may not get as many seats as the Tories, but his goal over the next 5 years, he says, is to become the official opposition.
But I think where Nigel Farage is quite effective is, he's a one-man band. I actually think he would really struggle at having to lead a big team of people, at having to be very serious. Leader of the opposition, or whatever you want to call it, is a lot different to what Nigel Farage does, where he's a very good campaigner, someone that speaks his mind, but he isn't someone. Let's say in the future he was prime minister. He's not someone that could be the G7 or could be doing the serious nitty-gritty policy details. It's exactly like Boris Johnson. We have too many people in this country that basically make massive points with no facts.
Do you think Joe Biden, for example, gets into the nitty-gritty of policy? And I mean, let's be frank, he doesn't even know what day of the week it is half the time.
I think they're very, very different people. I think one person, I think one person, okay, yeah, don't get me wrong, I think the age of Joe Biden is an issue, but actually, for many years he was vice president, he was in he was in Congress and Senate, it's very different, but completely different to Nigel Farage. And I think that the point here is, I actually don't necessarily disagree with him. I think, a lot of people can agree that the West did, push Putin into a perspective of, saying don't do this, don't do that, and Putin doesn't like to be told what to do. However, we can't say that the United Kingdom is to blame or the West is to blame. Only one person is to blame for invading a sovereign country, and that's Putin.
Jenny?
1, 2, 3. I do agree. I think that it's nonsense about, anything to do with the West made Putin do anything. Nobody makes Putin do anything. But back to something that's more interesting to me is this whole Nigel Farage question. Because Nigel Farage has the power 5 years from now to be prime minister. You would not believe how many people I speak to who say, and I listen to the radio a lot, who say, you know what, I'd vote for Farage. And they're middle-of-the-road people. It's the same thing like Trump in America, where nobody thought that Trump would get elected, and he did, and nobody thought that anybody other than wackadoo crazy people would vote for Trump. And the fact of the matter is that there's lots of middle-of-the-road people who vote for Trump.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of the ideas being floated around today by people like Nigel Farage and Donald Trump, 10, 15 years ago, these were widely accepted common views. It's only now, in this modern day and age, that some of the things, for example, the conversation about what is a woman, I mean, it's just a completely absurd conversation, where 15 years ago, you would have just been like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But, things have changed so much. So I think you have a point there where people who are middle of the road, quite hard-working people, just going out to work, want to feed their families, they're just, it's common sense thinking. So I think that's probably the allure with someone like Nigel Farage.
Alex and Jenny, we're out of time for this hour, but you'll be back with us in the next hour. We have mentioned the constituency seat of Clacton-on-Sea, so we will now read you out the candidate list, which is Yovan Owusu-Nipal, who's standing for the Labour Party.
Giles Watling from the Conservative Party.
Matthew Bensalem from the Liberal Democrats.
Nigel Farage from Reform UK.
Natasha Osborne, Green Party.
Craig Jameson from the Climate Party.
Tony Mack, Independent.
Tassos Papananstu from the Heritage Party.
Andrew Pemberton, UKIP.